Hello and welcome to this Pro Tools tips video. Today I'm going to be talking to you about latency and how we can control it within Pro Tools. So what is latency? Well, latency is the round-trip delay between a signal entering Pro Tools, such as your microphone, and Pro Tools doing all the processing it needs to do before pumping it out through your speakers or headphones. So why is latency important? Well, let's use the example of recording a performer, and let's say we have the latency set very high. So that means there's going to be a big delay between them playing and them actually hearing themselves back in their headphones. So let's say we've got a drummer and he's drumming along to a track. Now when he's drumming along, we're recording, he's hitting the snare drum, bang on the beat, but what he's actually hearing in his headphones is himself playing offbeat because there's a delay. And what you'll often find is the performer will try and compensate subconsciously for this, and you'll end up with a performance that's constantly pushing and pulling in and out of time as they try and compensate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to demonstrate that for you now so you can see what I'm talking about. So my microphone's running into the first input of my interface, and it's running into my screencasting software, which is recording my voiceover, which is how you're hearing me now, and my screen. So there's very low latency on this, which is good. And what I've done is I've set up Pro Tools to have a lot of latency. So when I record and enable this track, you're going to hear me in Pro Tools as well as through the screencasting software. Now I want you to imagine the screencasting software is me in the room with you recording, and the delay will be what we're getting back in our headphones from Pro Tools, and you'll see how hard it would be to perform with this going on. So let's record. Okay, so we're recording now, and we can clearly hear a distinct echo afterwards. Now you can imagine how fitting this would be for someone, especially on an instrument like drums where the time is critical. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to fix this now. We're going to delete that. We're going to go Setup, Playback Engine. Now the number that you're going to be interested in is this, the buffer size. So it's currently set to 1024 samples. So what this means is Pro Tools has 1024 samples to do all of its processing before it's pumped back out into the analog world through our speakers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reduce this to 256 samples. I'm going to click OK. And now we're going to see the difference in delay compared to before. Okay, so yeah, we can hear it's clearly much better. The delay is much less distinct and there's not as much timing difference. Let's stop this. So as you can hear, there's a lot less there, and we could probably end up using this for tracking drums at that level. Now you're probably saying, why don't we just leave it like that all the time? Why do we need a high buffer setting or high latency? And that's a great question. I'm going to show you now why we need it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the buffer setting to be even lower, to 64 samples, which is very fast. That's very little delay. And I'm going to act like we're mixing. So I'm going to create a load more tracks, and I'm going to put some plugins on these tracks. Okay, so I've put some really processor intensive plugins on these. I'll also add an EQ. 7-band. Okay, and we're going to try and record again, and we'll see what happens. Okay, so we're recording now, and Pro Tools has a very short time to do all of its processing, and we're going to see in a second that it's going to struggle and crash. So the problem here, we've only given Pro Tools 64 samples to do all of its processing in, and because we're simulating mixing, we've put a lot of plugins on there, and Pro Tools is struggling to do it in time. And it's hung and said, I can't do this in time. So really, when we're mixing, we want to have quite a high buffer setting or latency. And when we're tracking, we want to have quite a low one. So mixing, high latency, big delay. Recording, low latency, small delay. So what we've done is we've talked about latency, we've talked about what it is and why it matters. We've talked about how to control it and when you'd want a high one and when you want very low latency. So next time I'm going to be talking to you about click tracks and controlling tempos and time signatures. So thanks a lot for watching, I hope it was useful, and I'll see you next time.